Well, yes, indeed, we're going to have to move on and focus on the key matter here today, and we're going to Abuja for that. Right.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. I do have with me Mr. Ikechukwu, who is with us in the studio this morning. Just very quickly now, I'm trying to quickly get his designation. He is a columnist and former lecturer at the University of Lagos and also Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Well, quite a lot's been going on in the petroleum sector, and we didn't know about it until eventually leaked to limelight, and it would seem that quite a bit has been speculated. Were you one of those who was speculating that this could eventually come up, given that the position of the GMD was split from that of Minister of State, and eventually Mr. Kachikwu got one, and Mr. Mekanti Baru got the other? And the President retained the position of Minister of Petroleum. What were your thoughts?
Well, I was concerned. I didn't speculate on it. The fear was that with this kind of, if you like, not quite balkanization, but division of responsibilities, that there are bound to be gray areas which could lead to process irregularities. And I think that's what has emerged.
So this did not come as any surprise to you?
Not entirely. Not entirely. There were windows that could be exploited because the responsibilities were shared. It looked too big for anyone to have a complete overview. And so that's what could lead to this sort of development.
When you say not entirely, what parts of it came to you as a surprise then?
Well, that it built up for so long before somebody spoke up, and that also they couldn't meet among themselves to try to resolve issues. That, look, this is going on because I think there should be institutional concern besides personal schedules in an organization. And so if, for instance, two of us share responsibility for channels, and I'm handling areas that you cannot supervise, it would be reasonable for me, for the both of us to occasionally meet, being that we have the concern of the welfare of the institution at heart. I am surprised that didn't happen until it became a showdown like this.
It's interesting that you say that there are areas that, he did not have supervisory powers over. Is that what you see? That's
what I suspect, because why would all those things be going on up to this extent? And in any case, the conversation should have occurred much earlier between them. And I also think that my assumption is that with the letter, it would mean that probably quiet consultations didn't work. Probably also conversations with the president didn't work. Otherwise, I don't think a letter like the type that has thrown up all of this should have been the first leg in this game. No. It's either consultations were blocked or didn't take place or were not thought of, or people were waiting patiently for somebody to commit enough sin so they get him into trouble. All of these are possibilities, but then they're all hypothetical.
Now, looking at that letter, though, I mean, there are different areas to the letter. I mean, all the matters were tabled under subheadings, and then eventually we did see what the prayers were. At the end of the day, how much of a scandal would you say this is for you, looking at, the thrust of the Buhari administration to try and straighten things out, especially in the oil sector?
Well, it is a massive scandal, but again, I'm a little careful about assigning summary verdict on regime reputation. Every regime has agents. The level of cohesion within that regime determines how effectively the agents can deliver on a particular goal. There is, first of all, the challenge of everybody buying in on that one goal. And if you recall, I think my appearance before the last here on Channels, I had raised the matter of whether everybody in the president's team is as anti-corruption disposed as himself. And the perception and my position on the matter is that around him there are concerns. The old practices are too alive to die suddenly, and identifying oneself with the president does not automatically translate. That's officially talking anti-corruption does not immediately translate into actually being disposed against it the way the regime came on initially. And I think what we are seeing is part of the crisis that began even before the elections. The APC is made up of several strands of political persuasions. There was no merger, if you like, in intentions and aspirations before and immediately after the elections, and it also has not occurred. You had the aggrieved people from PDP who felt the political space was no longer available because Jonathan was contesting, and so they moved. Those who were also very badly treated by the party moved. Rochas and his Abga people. So you had nearly 6 strands. And if you're talking about political aspiration, the aspirations were not uniform. There was APC headed by Buhari talking seriously about corruption. There were also from other sides people who even had cases to worry about who joined. Now the government came on and it became apparent. That's why you had a rogue Senate presidency. A Senate presidency that did not emerge from the party in power and which lost actually to the party. So all of that together. You now see that even 2 years on, that cohesion is yet to be built. And so there are too many things that get into the public domain that shouldn't in a government. There are just too many.
So I recall when you said that last time that the president seemed to be alone in his fight against corruption and that many members of his cabinet might not be with him on that fight. And I recall asking you how you knew that. And you talked about how there were whisperings and there were conversations that had been happening outside of the place. Was this part of the conversation that you had heard before that time?
Well, also not just conversations, which might then be degraded if you want to use the army of the military to gossip and rumors. No. These are many of the people who spoke. Sometimes these are public seminars, conferences, quiet consultations. The concerns, for some, it was a matter of when the crisis called NNPC would rupture, actually. They had more facts than they made available, but apparently it was like this thing is not structured to deliver in the end without creating scandals. You know, the president as minister, he clearly put people he trusted. One thing we must know for a fact is that all that is emerging now is not on account of his instruction. He didn't say, go and do this. I don't know if you get my point. You appoint me MD of channels, and I begin to do things that I could do and think I'll get away with, and it's found out. Even though you appointed me, you didn't instruct me to do that, but the structure was defective.
But when we hear that, you know, the person complaining, I mean, the person who is complained about got approvals from the president, what are we to say to that?
What we're to say is that approvals probably were given on straight-line communications without looking at the overarching responsibilities of NNPC. I make requisitions and you approve. I send prayers and you approve. If these prayers are sent without consent for the overall life of the organization, then that means there is limited monitoring and evaluation.